Ah, gewaltig. So you nourish the Rachnis and the Gashmis all together. But the Malav Malch is also Rachnis. So it's a double dose of Rachnis. Okay, so the Gemara yesterday was discussing the Kavachomer that Rabbi Shmuel and is it Rabbi Shmuel or is it Rabbi Shimon? I think it's Rabbi Shmuel. Is Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Shmuel made a Kavachomer. Madech, if you look at the Parhel Dovish al Tibor and the Seir Shal Yoy Makipurim, there are two different animals, yet whatever avoidas that they both have in common, which are the Zrikas that are in the Heichal, have the same halacha. So Kol Shekain, if you have two animals that are the same animal and they're the same type of carbon, they should follow the same process. And based on that, Zokti Gemara, the also lay par Yom Kippurim laes bedam v'tfila mipar koyin Mashiach. Using this Kavul Chomer, we have a Kavul Chomer that just like par koyin Mashiach has the halachas that everything's ma'akiv and has es bedam utfila has those three halachas. S that even if there's a wart or growth on the finger of the kohen, it's not a hefsek. Bedam means the keli that he's mekabel the dam and has to be one keli that has enough dam to give all the matanos. Utfila, the finger that he's spritzing with, has to be dipped in the bottom of the keli into the dam, and he can't just wipe off some dam from the side of the keli. That's what you learn from bedam. And from utfila, we learn that you have to dip your finger into the dam itself. You can't just take from the sides. I'm sorry. Yeah, but the main thing is you can't brush it off of the wall. Yeah. So Zog to Gemara. So those are all the halachas we learn from par to par, and we also learn halachas from seir to seir, because anytime you have two karbonas that are the same carbon, like a chatos, and the same animal, we learn through the Kavul Chomer that they should have the same halacha. So therefore, v'azilay seir yom akipurim mi seir avodas kachavim. Mikal v'chomer, Sirei Avodas Kachom is included in the pasuk because it says in the pasuk, Yosy lapar kasher asher lapar, and from Hachatos the Gemara taught us that it also includes Sirei Avodas Kachom. So we learned Sirei Avodas Kachom with the Hekesh from the Par Koy Mashiach and the Baal and Dovish al Tzibur, and through a Kavul Chomer, the Seir Avodas Zarah can pass on this information to the Seir Yom Kippur. Frank the Gemara. The Seir Yom Kippurim, the Seir Avodas Zarah, which we only know these halachas by them, like Estam Betfila and all the halachas of the Matnas Domim that are Ma'akiv, we only know it through a hekesh from Par Koyin Mashiach. Can you now export this information to a Seir Yom Kippurim with a Kavul Chomer? Amar Papa, absolutely. Kasavar Tana Devei Rabbi Yishmael, Davar Halamoid Behekesh, Chayzer Umalamed V'Kavul Chomer. If you import a halacha using a hekesh, you can export that halacha using a Kavul Chomer. Beautiful. Now there's another limud. The Rabbi Shmuel said that being that we learn everything from a Kavul Chomer, I don't need any of these sukim to be marba, the karbanos of Yom Kippur. I learned it from the Kavul Chomer, and therefore he says lepar. When it says lepar, well, also lepar, it's not referring to Yom Kippur. I know everything from the Kavul Chomer, and therefore he says lepar zeh par helam davar shel tzibur. Frank the Gemara, I don't need an extra limit of lepar to tell us that we're talking about a par helam davar shel tzibur. This whole pasuk is talking about a par helam davar shel tzibur. Habet tzibur gufeksit. Omar Papa, true, but we still need this lepar, this extra hekesh. Why? Because of a fascinating chiddush that we're about to learn. Mishum digboi igmurei par helam davar shel tzibur v'yoseres ushtei kloyos l'sirei avodas kachavim. One of the halachas that the par helam davar shel tzibur is passing on is the halacha of seirei is to the Seir Avodas Kachavim through the hekesh. because it says hachatos, and hachatos includes Sira of Yakovim. So the par helam davar shel tzibur is the source of the hekesh, and it's exporting the information to Sira of Yakovim. The problem is in the parsha of par helam davar shel tzibur, it doesn't mention that the Yeseris and Shtei Kloyos needs to be put on the Mizbeach. We only know it by par helam davar shel tzibur is because it says it by par koyin Mashiach, and there is a there's a hekesh from par koyin Mashiach to par helam davar shel tzibur. So therefore, par helam davar shel tzibur b'gufei like siv ve'keisha asi. I only know that the Yeseris and Shtei Kloyos you have to be makir on the Mizbeach by a par helam davar shel tzibur because we learn it through a hekesh from par koyin Mashiach. And therefore, we know something that you learn with a hekesh, you can't teach with a hekesh. So, par helam davar shel tzibur imported the halacha of Yeseris and Shtei Kloyos with a hekesh. You cannot export it to Sirei Avodas Kechavim. So therefore, Itzrich Lepar, we have an extra pasuk of Lepar, Lemahava Kemandich Siv Bei Begufei. It treats it like it was written Begufei. So we have a new rule. Even though you can't export what you learned for the Hekesh, if you had two occasions, you could export. Why? Because when you have two occasions to teach you the same halacha, we treat it as if it's written in the pasuk itself. So since there's two occasions, from par helam davar to par koy Mashiach, we look at it as if it says Yeseris and Shtei Kloyos gufa by par helam davar shel tzibur, and now through a hekesh, par helam davar shel tzibur can export that halacha to Sirei Avodas Kechavim. There's the main hekesh of also lapar kasher also lapar. The pasuk says directly, do to the par helam davar shel tzibur the same thing you do to the par koy Mashiach, and then lapar is extra. The whole part you could have just said va'asa kasher asa. It doesn't say lapar. So that's a second hekesh to tell us that even though Yeseris and Shtei Kloyos isn't mentioned there beferish, it could still export it to Sirei Avodas Kechavim. And therefore, loy lahava davar halamoid behekesh chayzer umelamed behekesh. We avoid that problem. Zok the heilige Gemara Tanya kavoseder Rav Papa. Rav Papa taught us this halacha that you need lapar as a second hekesh to solve the problem of davar halamoid behekesh chayzer umelamed behekesh. We have a brayse in fact that supports Rav Papa in this halacha. The pasuk says the brayse says va'asa kasher os. That's what the pasuk says. Ma tamad loymar lapar. Why do we need lapar for? If it already says v'asher kasher osa, lapar is extra. Lefish and emar. It says in the parsha of Asir of Avodah Zarah. That's brought for a tzibur that's over Avodah Zarah b'shogeg. In the parsha of Shlach, it says that the kohen is going to bring the carbon to be mechaper on this aver b'shogeg, and then the pasuk elaborates. And I'm going to read it in the Torah Ara Shalom, who has the full wording. V'chiper hakoyin al kol adas b'nei Yisrael v'nislach lahem. That's all the pasuk has to say. The kohen does the avodah as mentioned earlier in these psukim, and he's mechaper for Klal Yisrael. The rest of the pasuk seems like a whole series of words that are just extra redundant. Ki shegagahu. We know it's the shogeg. The pasuk starts with the shogeg. No, this is the chlam daf in the chum. That if the kohen does the avodah, it's going to be a kapuda for Klal Yisrael. But the pasuk should have stopped there. Then the pasuk goes on with a whole bunch of extra words. Kishkagahu, we know the shkaga. Earlier the pasuk it says shkaga, right? The heim evius karbanim, isha l'Hashem, the chatosim ufnei Hashem al shkagosim. It's like a lot of extra words. What's a pshat in the vert? You remember teaching it, and you remember you were wondering if it was a pshat. So the Gemara had to that night. So zok the Gemara chatosim that it says the chatosim ufnei Hashem. That's referring about the chait that we're discussing here. The chait of Klal Yisrael being over Avodah Zarah b'shogeg. Chatosim elu sirei Avodas Kechavim that we're talking about in the parasha Shlach. But shigagosam al shigagosam is not referring to that. Shigagosam amra Torah chatosim hareihi lecha hishigagosam. Shigagosam is referring to a par helam davar shel tzibur, and the Torah is telling us over here another hekesh that treats the sirei Avodas Kechavim like the par helam davar shel tzibur, an extra hekesh. Shigagosam mehechan lamatata. How do you know but that by shigagosam everything's ma'akiv, all of these rikos are ma'akiv? Loy behekesh. Don't we know from a hekesh, from par kohen Mashiach? This is all the Bryce asking. V'chidavar alamed behekesh, toizer umelamed behekesh, hamad loymar lepar Zeh par helam dov shel tzibur. You have a second hekesh. Lepar zeh par kohen Mashiach. So the first lepar is referring to par helam dov shel tzibur. Kasher also lepar kohen Mashiach. We have another hekesh. The second hekesh overcomes the problem of dover alamed behekesh. Toju malamed behekesh, just like Rav Papa said. Sorry? So that answers it. Now the rest of the pasuk is also a lot of extra stuff. The Gemara gets to it later. Zok to Gemara Vacher. Amar Mar. So now that we have this new brisa, so the Gemara Kivayochel gets distracted. Oh, let's focus on this new brisa. Amar Mar Chatosom Elu Seirei Avodas Kacham. Frank Gemara, why in the world do I need another hekesh for Seirei Avodas Kachavim? I don't understand. We just that's what we learned from the pasuk of Asa. It says in the pasuk, "We also la parakasher also la parachatos," and the Gemara just told us on Lamatesavet Beis, hachatos is coming to include in the hekesh seir avodas kachavim. So typically mikra kama. The Amar Mar we learned in the first brisa that we started on, I believe Lamatesavet Aleph, hachatos l'raboy seirei avodas kachavim. So why do I need another hekesh? Dr. Gemara. I need two occasions between Sir Avodas Kachavim and Par Helam Dover Shel Tzibur. Because if I only had one hekesh, Sol Kedai Dechamina Hanamili Hazois Teksivam Begufei. All of the halachas that say beferish in the parish of Par Helam Dover Shel Tzibur, that's what it's passing on through Hachatos to the Sir Avodas Kachavim. Avol, what about turning on Talmud Beis? What about Yosy Shtei Kloyos? It doesn't say that at all in the parasha of Par Helam Shel Tzibur. The Leksivim B'Gufei we only learned through a hekesh, so maybe that's not included in the hekesh to Seir Avodas Kachavim. Emaloi Kamash Malam. What's shver about this? We just said on Amar Aleph that if there's a double hekesh, it's Ki'ilu Nichtav B'Gufei, right? So that is the problem that we have. So look at Tosfos. Avol Yosei Shtei Kloyos Leksivim B'Gufei Emaloi Tema. Ha'amran we just said Lepar Maisi. Let's look at Yudches. Lepar miyaser. Lepar miyaser is extra. Lahachila mahava. Come on, the cost of the gufay. Lagmur elisir avodas kachavim. The Aktosh is a gavaltig pshat. V'shema ilav hachekesho dechatosam al shigagosam. If we didn't have the second hekesh, lo have the original lehachi. So now you see how complicated kochim is. Make a taste to make a double hekesh between Par Helam Shel Tzibur and Par Kohen Mashiach. Maybe they should make a double hekesh. Maybe you should purpose something else. The test is we have a problem. We have two occasions by Sir Avodas Kachavim to Par Helam Shel Tzibur. What's the second hekesh for? So there must be something else. So mizmezukin that there's another hekesh to learn up the klois as well. So we have one double hekesh to tell you as mizlen and another double hekesh. Unday maybe I would have used lepar for something else. I'm only using lepar to be a second hekesh between Par Helam Shel Tzibur and Par Kohen Mashiach because of a double hekesh between Par Helam Shel Tzibur and Sir Avodas Zarah. What? That's right. That's the extra. That's the secondary hekesh. There's two occasions. Zok bar Omer Rav Huna Bereder Rav Nosson Rav Papa. Rav Huna Bereder Nosson told Rav Papa the following. But the problem is now we're going back to the earlier Rav Papa. So let's go back to the earlier Rav Papa that the Gemara was talking about, because otherwise we're not really going to know what's going on. So Zok to Gemara, Tanya Kavasei der Rav Papa. I'm going back to Mem Amud Beis. Tanya Kavasei der Rav Papa. What did Rav Papa tell us over here? Rav Papa told us that the extra hekesh that we have, according to Rabbi Yehuda, remember Rabbi Yehuda held that Kain Tasa in the pasuk is referring to Yom Kippur. That's what Rabbi Yehuda told us, because he's not using Kain Tasa for the Mizbeach, for the four matos in the Mizbeach Ha'olah, because he knows that from Ba'oil Moed or from Asher. So therefore, he uses the Kain Yasa to refer to Yom Kippur. So the Gemara asked, why do you need Kain Yasa for Yom Kippur? I already have another thing. According to Rabbi Yehuda looked at it, this pasuk in the parsha of Yom Kippur. The pasuk is V'chila mikaper es hakodesh v'es oil moyed Ves Mizbeach, Vehikir, Ves Asir Achai. And Rabbi Yehuda darshan v'chila, when you're finished all of the matnas dam, including shavicha shiurayim liyasoid, only their mechaper. So this pasuk is telling you that every single avodah, up until the last avodah of ein mafir nachar pesach afikoymin, every halach is ma'akiv. Every halach is ma'akiv. It's telling us. So if every halach is ma'akiv, why do I need this extra hekesh? Why do I need this extra hekesh of kain tasa? Zokar Papa. Even though it includes everything, there's three things that I wouldn't have known because they're very abstract. Es, dam, and tefillah. That was a published chiddush. That es, dam, and tefillah, even though you have the chilul mechaper, it includes all the laws that I mentioned in the Torah. But es, dam, and tefillah, which is remotely learned from Par Kodim Mashiach, the Paul Dam that you wouldn't have known unless we had the extra v'cheintas. That's right. So that's what Papa said. And the Gemara said, we're going to bring a raya to our Papa. And what was the raya to our Papa? That from B'chein Yasa, you learn even this es dam tefillah. So the Gemara said, it says, V'osher kasher asa, ma tamid lepar. I'm sorry, he learns from lepar. And from lepar, he learns that. Lepar, l'rabbis per yom kippurim, l'choma she'omar be'inyin. So l'choma she'omar, Rashi says, every last thing up to ein maftir nachar pesach avikoymin, up till even the halacha of es dam tefillah. So that's what the Gemara says. The problem with that is that's not a right to our Papa. That's very strange to our Papa, because our Papa said all the halachas, not l'chol mashram v'yisinian, all the halachas you learn out of bechila v'chaper. It's only es dam tefillah that you learn from the extra hekesh of the par. So the brayz that you bring a right from stimmt this with their Papa. So that's the Gemara's kasha now. Mem Aleph, we're going back to what we learned 2 days ago. Zok to Gemara, Amar le Rabuna b'red of Naslar Papa, but the Tana that we're bringing a raya from says Par Yom Kippurim l'chol ma'asha Omar be'inyin ka'omar. He says it's referring to everything. So oy bazoi, I don't need v'chiper. Zok to Gemara ein echanami tanoi. It's actually a machlokes tanoim. If you could learn everything out of Lepar, or if you only learn es dam tefillah Lepar. All where Papa was trying to bring a raya from is you see that es dam tefillah is a unique zach, and he held you needed a special limud for it. So really what do you mean? Okay. So Tanoi to Machlim, Tana de Rav, Mar Bahachi. Tana de Rav learns like the brayso we quoted that says that from the par you know everything, even es dam tefillah. And Tana de Shmuel, Lo Mar Bahachi, he just learned es dam tefillah from the par, and the rest of the halachas of Yom Kippur he learns from the chila. No, that was a detail, but we have to follow up. Yeah, that's right. It's the Medrushim that's right. So I actually erred a little bit because I kept on saying from the V'chein Tasa. So the V'chein Tasa is referring to avoidus the Gemara, because according to Rabbi Yehuda, you have a V'chein Tasa, right? You have a chila v'chiper, you have a V'chein Tasa, and you have lepar, right? He has three things. So the Gemara says that one is to tell you only things that would be ma'akiv the seder, right? So one hekesh is only for things in Yom Kippur that the seder is ma'akiv. The second one, which would be even for things that a seder is not ma'akiv. So that's lepar, and the Gemara said, I don't need that for lepar because I have a chila v'chiper. So it's lepar that Rabbi Yehuda is using to tell you es dam tefillah according to the way Rav Papa understood it. Okay, gewaltig. Zog to Gemara weiter. It's a little bit complicated because there's so many different limudim, and every Tana has their own mahalachim. Zog to Helig Gemara weiter. Tana the very Abishua. Now we have a little bit of a break. We're going to have a little bit of an Agadah Gemara. If you can imagine Agadah Gemara in Zevachim. Tana the very Abishua. We know that it only mentions the Hakrava, the Haktorah of the Yoserish and Shtei Kloyos by Par Kohen Mashiach, and we need a Hekesh to say that it applies to Par Helm Dov Shel Tzibur. We have a double Hekesh, so it should be Kilus Ksiv Bukvei. But why Taka didn't the Torah write a Bukvei? Mipnei Man Nemer Yoserish Shtei Kloyos by Par Kohen Mashiach, V'lo Nemer Par Helm Dov Shel Tzibur. Why Taka did the Rebbeinu Shalom write the Torah by making us learn it out of a double hekish, why didn't the Abisha write it bigufei? Zok to Gemara, especially since we said it, Ke'ilah was written bigufei. Moshel Melech Bosav Adam, either Shazam or there's another use of Shakas, Aloy Havoy. If the Kohen gets angry at his friend, he has to punish him, but he wants to. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
The king is the Kohen.
Oh, I'm sorry, the king. I said the Kohen.
Gets angry.
Oh, he got angry on his good friend. He wants to play down the Avla. He doesn't want to make a big deal about it. He wants to protect his friend. So therefore, umiyat b'ser chaynoi mipnei chibasai. So when it's talking about the Kohen doing an Avera, he's an individual. An individual, there's no special chiba. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu throws the book at him. Yosaris or stay close. But when the Rebbe is talking about all of Knesset Yisrael, that's already the Irish is believed. When we're together as a group, as Gans Klai Yisrael, we're believed. Yes, the Rebbe likes every Yachid, but the habit that the Rebbe has for Klai Yisrael united is Ad Ein Shiv Ad Ein Soif. So the Rebbe didn't even want to write the full consequences, so he was moramis it with a heck. The Tanit of Rabbi Shmuel, another shaila. In the parsha of Par Kohen and Mashiach, when the Torah says you spritz 7 times on the paroiches, it's like English. But by Par Halav Shel Tibur, it says it in the Litvish dry oifen paroiches. It just says you should spritz the blood of the paroiches, not the heilige paroiches. What's the difference? Mashal lemelech basav adam. It's again a mashal to a king of basav adam. Shesarcha all of Medina. There was a Medina that was rebelling. If it's only a miyut like the Kohen Mashiach, Palmalia Shalom Miskayemis. The king's cabinet is still Miskayim. There's still a big, beautiful flag behind him in the pictures. But a Meruba Sarcha, if Roiv of his people are rebelling, he's in hiding. He's losing his cabinet. He's not posing in the front of the cameras with a bunch of flags behind him. Ein Palmalia Shalom Miskayemis. So it doesn't say Parareches HaKodesh. It's Kivayachal Mesmait in the cover of the Rebbeinu Shalom when the Par Halav Shel Tibur. But I said flag is the Parareches Shachar Kodesh. Lefichach im Nasan Puluk discipline. So we need to go back to the Mishnah because this is going to be quite complicated, and we need to go back to the Mishnah to understand what it's talking about. So we're going back to the beginning of the parak. For those who have our scroll Mesivta, it's going to be the first Gemara in this new Sefer. And let's have a look at what the Mishnah says. The Mishnah first talks about a regular carbon chatas, by Chitzoni, where we have a machloikis Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Beis Shammai said it needs at least 2 matanos, and Beis Hillel says it needs 1 matan. But regardless, that matanos that's required, I'm sorry? But yeah, that matana that's required is the only matana that you could be mefagel. So if you had to come on this pigel by the matana or matanos that are required, it will be pigel. If you did that with Adam Machshav's pigel and you add the Machshava later, it won't make a pigel. Or vice versa. If you had a Machshav's pigel by the first matana and then you had a different Machshav's psul by the second matana, it wouldn't have an impact because it's nisrat already. You can't impact the pigel anymore. That's by Chachatas and Chitayna, where you don't need to make the Zrikas b'diavad. Right?
It's pigel, it's not.
Correct. But kol anitmin al mizbeach hapnimi, where every single matnas dam is required, and there are those, as we learned, Rabbi Yudol's, even the shiori adam that you pour on the yisoid. So she'imchizar achas mikol matanois kiyul loy keeper. So therefore, they're all subject to pigel. So let's look closely at what the Mishnah says. Lefichach nosan kulon kesikna, which I would touch is if all the matanois dam were spritzed properly with the right kavanah. The Acha Shaloi Ketikna, we're going to touch as the last one Shaloi Ketikna, because we'll see in the Gemara that's how Rish Lakish learned it. The Acha Shaloi Ketikna, and the last one was Shaloi Ketikna, Psula vein bekaris. It will be possible and there's no karis. Now the question is, why ain't bekaris? But he had to come on a pigel. The last Zrika, which was required, why wouldn't it be pigel and Yishuyesh bekaris? That's the problem we have here. Zokt Rashi tells us a pshat. Zokt Rashi, I'm looking at the second to the last line on the daf, smack in the middle of the line. The ein by karis Zokt Rashi, she'einu achronim mefaglosei. Having a machshava of chuslas mane, but the last matnas tam won't make a pigel. You know why? Because the tan of our Mishnah masol ein mefaglin bechatzi matir. If you want to have a machshava's pigel, You got to do it right. The entire Zrika has to be with a Machshavas Chotas Manli. Part of the Zrika won't work.
So what's enough for the last one and the first one?
Beautiful kasha. If I wanted to make a diak, dafka, the last one possible with Mekarish, but the first one wouldn't be possible with Mekarish. But the diak doesn't work. Because if you all aim a fag b'chatzi matir, even if the first one you had a machshavas pigel on and the other one's not, weiter it wouldn't be pigel, right? So that is exactly what the Gemara is going to ask. And the Gemara is going to boy there. We're not going to blind. Rashi's pshat here is very much according to the happening of the Gemara. The Maskana of the Gemara, this is not pshat at all. So that's a very good kasha. The very good kasha is if you make the deal, dafka the last one, but the first one would be pigel, shishtimpnis, if you're going to touch the Mishnah as ein mefagl b'chatzi matir. Zogt a heilige Gemara. Tanan Hashem. Pigel bekoimetz v'loy b'levoy. How does a mincha work? The kohen is koimetz, takes a kmitza from the mincha, and he either takes it to the mizbech by hand, and if he does, he has to do it in his right hand, or he can put it into a keli. Remember, we had the zera shava by mincha. It could be like a chatash, or it could be like a dosham. So the Gemara says there that he puts let's say he puts the koimetz into a klisharis, and he puts that on the mizbeach with the levoina. He puts the levoina, first he sprinkles levoina on the koimetz, and then he puts it on the mizbeach. So what if
First he puts the levaina
on the koimetz?
No.
Or he puts levoina on the mincha, and he makes a kmitza in the place where the levoina is.
But but he puts the levaina on the side.
Oh, so he makes a kmitza pure, and then he puts levoina later. Puts it on. Okay, so pigel b'koimetz v'loy b'levoin. What if he had kavana for pigel? Baktaris hamincha that Rashi shnei matir and yesh hakoimetz v'levoin. So from hikter as echad b'machshavas pigel, when you were maktir the koimetz had a machshavas pigel, v'yo echad b'shtika, and the other one not with a machshavas pigel, or punkt verkeerd b'levoin b'loy b'koimetz. Reb Meir Eimer pigel. Reb Meir held it would be pigel, and therefore v'chayav in olav kares. Now the easiest shot to learn in Reb Meir is because you could make pigel b'chatzi matir. That's what you would think. That's the easiest and simplest way to learn Reb Meir, and that's why we're not going to learn that way, because this is kachim. You don't go to the simplest way. But avada, we're going to have a raya. You can't learn like that. So the Chacham say very clearly that there's no pigel b'chatzi matir. So Rashi went with the pashtus. The pashtus is that the Mishnah is referring to the Chacham. The problem is Chaim's kasha. It doesn't stem if you had the machshavas pigel first. So Amar Reb Shimon ben Lakish, loy tema, don't take the easy way out thinking that shot in Reb Meir, time of Reb Meir, the kosaver mefaglim b'chatzi matir. Rather, Reb Meir holds just like the Rabbanon, ein mefaglim b'chatzi matir. So if it's ein mefaglim b'chatzi matir, how could you say pigel b'koimetz v'loy b'levoina or b'levoina v'loy b'koimetz? It's pigel, it's mamash achatzi matir. Zogt Reb Shimon ben Lakish, I'm going to tell you pshat on Reb Meir, and I'm going to prove to you that this is pshat on Reb Meir. Elohacha b'may askinon kagoin shenosan es hakoimetz b'machshava. He gave the koimetz with a machshavas pigel, and Rashi is careful to speak out over here that whenever it says a machshavas pigel, it also means he said out, he spoke it out with his mouth. The machshavas chustas manay v'alevoina b'shtika. He put the levain without a machshavas pigel, just plain. He didn't say anything. And Kosovar, Vikosovar, and Reb Meir holds Kola Oisa al Das Rishonahu Oisa. So therefore, even though the second part of the Avodah was done b'shtika, we say that that's also Machshavas Pigel because you always go Basar, the first Machshava Kola Oisa al Das Rishonahu Oisa. When you spoke out by the Hakrava Sakoimet that he has a mind Chutas Manoi, we say that's also going on the second part. The Hakrava Salavoy. And therefore he could hold a mefagel b'chatzi matir. But here's the ganze matir. Now Zok Reb Shokish, so you're going to ask me what's failed tos as I come to a sit shot. Learn Pashut mefagel b'chatzi matir. I know it because of our Mishnah, because I'm going to prove to you that our Mishnah cannot go according to the Rabbanon. And how am I going to prove it to you with Chaim's kasha? And therefore it's going to have to go according to Reb Meir, and I'm going to show you how according to Reb Meir it's going to stem beautifully our Mishnah. Midikatani, it says on the Mishnah, Lafichachem Noson Kulon Kisiknon. V'acha Shaloi Kisiknon possible Vein by Karis, so I can make a dik. Ha'acha Shaloi Kisiknon, if the first Drika was with a Machshavas Pigel, the Kulon Kisiknon, it would be Pigel. So Mani, who can hold like this? Ilema Rabbanon, If you want to say it's the Rabbanon, you have Chaim's Kasha. Ha'ami Rabbanon, Ein Mefagel B'Chatzi Mater. So that's out. Ella Reb Meir. You must be going to quote Reb Meir. Now, the time Reb Meir, Mishum B'Mefagel B'Chatzi Mater, if that's his svara, so then either way it should be pigel. Saif the Machshavas pigel was at the beginning, and Saif the Machshavas pigel was at the end. Ha'afilu Kiddugatani, Nami, it would be pigel. So you're forced to say a different pshat in the Mishnah. Ella, I'm going to tell you pshat in the Mishnah. Ella pshat in the Mishnah is the Kasavar Reb Meir hold Kol Oisa Al Das Rishonahu Oisa. So therefore, if you had the Machshavas pigel at the end, it's Ein Mefagel B'Chatzi Mater. But if you had the Machshavas pigel at the beginning, then you say the whole Zrika, all of the Zrikas was Al Das Rishona, and therefore it's a complete pigel. So that's how you've arrived from our Mishnah, how you have to learn Pshat in Reb Meir. Because Al Karchach, our Mishnah could only be going according to Reb Meir, and in order to make a stim with Reb Meir, you're forced to say the svara of Kol Oisa Al Das Rishonu Oisa and Ein Mefagel B'Chatzi Mater. Because if you have Mefagel B'Chatzi Mater, you still have a problem at the end. That's a dafka be two things. We have a ride that Reb Meir holds Ein Mefagel B'Chatzi Mater, and you have a ride that he holds Kol Oisa Al Das Rishonu Oisa. I'm sorry? When? When I only had a machshavas pigel at the end? Omer Rab Shmuel bar Yitzchak. Now this is going to be a very, very complicated pshat. No, you don't have any right to anything Reb Meir says. Because our mission is not Reb Meir. Our mission is the Rabbanon. So couldn't call your right completely August Lagan. But now I have a big problem. How am I going to learn the Mishnah? I made a dig. How if I was mafagel at the beginning, it would be pigel. Does it make sense? Zokamur, I'll tell you why. Because the whole pshat of the Mishnah is Amish. What did the Mishnah say? Lefichach im nosan kulon kesiknon v'achas shaloi kesiknon posel. You know what that means? It means im nosan kulon kesiknon. That means with a kosher machshava, with a beautiful pigel machshava. I'm a machshava pigel is always with a ganz guy. He did the pigel mamish with like a shmak. Beautiful pigel. So if he had all of the right kavunas of pigel, as if his doubt is on. So that's it's a doichik to learn that way. But that's how the Gemara wants to say that it shouldn't be a raya to write shlokish's pshat. So zog the Gemara Amar Rab Shmuel bar Yitzchak Lo Mar Bonani Umay Kesiknon lepigel. You made a perfect pigel. You had a klud machshuva shaloi bismanoi, but everything was zrika. A geschmack pigel, right? Now, so let's see how the Mishnah works now. So I want to stop at this step, and I want to see how Rashi fears this step exactly. So Zog to Gemara, Ketiknon lepigel. So Rashi, Harishoinois, the first Zrikas were b'machshavas, the chutz l'zmanoi, a very geschmacka chutz l'zmanoi, and we have to look into the Sionim to see the added words that have to be added here. The achas and the last zrika was shaloi kesikna lepigel. It was a tashvacha pigel. Ella b'shtika. He did it b'shtika. So that's going to be possible ve'ein by kares. That will be possible ve'ein by kares. He doesn't hold. You go bust it in machshav. And you see that. This is exactly what Rashi says. Vashmina, the chiddush of the Mishnah is the loy amrinon al das harishoina who also. But if it would be punkt fakert, if he had the machshava, a good machshava of pigel first, and then he had a bad machshava, and if he had a machshava of, if he had a regular bad machshava first, and then he had a machshava of pigel, that for sure wouldn't be pigel. That for sure wouldn't be pigel because that's also in mefagel b'chatzi mater, right? So Zok to Gemara, it doesn't make sense to say pshat in the Mishnah like that. I mean, the whole thing is very short to say kesikna means pigel, but the Gemara is going to prove that kesikna can't mean pigel. Zok to Gemara, v'ami dekatani lefichach im nosan kulon kesiknon b'achas shaloi kesikna posel. How could you say that shaloi kesikna means with a kosher machshava? Shaloi kesikna doesn't mean a kosher machshava. If it meant a kosher machshava, what it should have said, Zok Rashi, it should have said bishtika, or it should have said, it could have said either kesikna, it could have said also kulon kesikna chutz me'achas mehen. That's what it could, chutz me'achas mehen. But it doesn't have to speak out kesikna. I'm sorry, it doesn't speak out shaloi kesikna, because the word shaloi kesikna came in the zugun of a gita machshava. It's a geitnish. If you wanted to just make the contrast that it was a bad pickle, he should have chutz from the last one. But to call the last one shaloi kisikna, you can't say that. That's what the Gemara says. So, Frank the Gemara, it doesn't make sense to say that. You can't say that. So then you have to say the sikna is luxury. So your pshat's no good. We have to say that it means it was kosher. Huda also. And then we're back to a shvera pshat, and you're back to Rish Lakish's raya that it must be going according to Reb Meir, and the chiddush of the Mishnah that Reb Meir holds that the machshava rishon that carries through and everything. Amar Rabba, no. You know what my shalok is sikna? You can have a loish sikna that's not bishtika. He could have had a machshava chuslam chaymai. So he had a beautiful kisikna, like a shemaka chazanish shear of pigel on all those rikas, and the last one was like kisikna, means it was chuslam chaymai. Doshtim diyazayigit. Or Rav Ashi Amar Shaloi L'Shmoi. Or the last one that was a machshava of Shaloi L'Shmoi, is a chor mechatas he's being makriv. So you had to come on for an oila. Oh, gewaltig. But Dr. Gemara, that's going to be a problem too. You know why? Because then you're going to have to make the deal. If all of the machshavas were machshavas pigel, besides for the last one was a machshavas psul, then you're going to say it's not pigel, right? Michlal dechi loy avid la. If he didn't beferish speak out by the last rika, he was just b'shtika mechayev. It would be chayev, and that's a raya that he holds. You do go aldas, rishoina, and that can't be the rabbanon. You know why the rabbanon can't be aldas rishoina? Because then in our brisa that we focused, why do the whole pickle becomes v'leibel levaina? Why did the chum say it's not pickle? You should say aldas rishoina. So once the way you want to learn in the Rabbanon, you're going to have a raya that vaytu taldas rishoina. So that can't be the Rabbanon anymore. The Tana Reisha Michlal dechiloy avad law chutzum kodesh lo yishloim mechayev. So Zok Gemara, no, that's not a raya. You could still say it's going according to the Rabbanon. You're going to be medayik dafka chutzum koimer chutzum shmoi messes up the pigel. But if he was b'shtika, wouldn't mess up the pigel, and therefore you're going to have a problem now. Nah, don't say that. Rather, say the Mishnah is saying what it's saying. But huadin bishtika would be mechayev, because bishtika you don't say you go both to the first ma'aser. So how come the Mishnah didn't say a case of shtika? Because I did the Tana Reisha pigel the chayavin of kurs. Tananami seva pigel bein by kurs. Because in the Reisha cases of the beginning it was chutz manoi, right? And the first zrika was chutzum manoi, the second zrika was chutzum koimoi, and the Gemara wants to say a chiddush that chutzum koimoi wouldn't impact the first machshava, because the first machshava was on the zrika that counted. So since it was using chutzum manoi and chutzum koimoi in the reisha where it was necessary, you use it here too. But rather huadin if it was bishtika. So at the end of the day, the Gemara slugs up Rish Lakish's raya, because maybe our Mishnah is going according to the Rabbanon, and it just means that if he had a machshavas pigel throughout everything, and the sikna means a machshavas pigel, so it's a very big chiddush. Pshat Rashi doesn't go with this pshat in the Mishnah, because Rashi always tries to stick with the most simplest pshat. But the fichach of notzim kuluk siknon means with a machshavas pigel. And the last one was chus limkoimoi, or it was shaloi l'shma. Then parts of ein beikaris, because ein mefagel bechatzi mater, like the Rabbanon holds. Gewaltig. A beautiful, beautiful Gemara. A little complicated, but it's a beautiful Gemara. Okay, everyone should have like a bench to Zevachim, and Bez Hashem tomorrow we're gonna plug again. I was thinking to myself, Kachim is really, really hard. It really is hard. It's cheshbon, it's different types of svaros, it's new concepts. But I thought to myself that it's brought down that someone who's Isaac and Kachim, it's Ki'ilu, he brought the Karbonis himself. So I thought, okay, you bebel through Karbonis every day, Yosy. No, that also takes an avodah. But that Haravan in Schwitzen. And I hold you get a bigger tayelis from learning Kachim. You know why? Because when you do basic mikdash for standing, we only were able to benefit from the Karbonis brought on Yom Kippur, Spritz Lefnai Lefnim on Yom Kippur. But when you learn the Haravan, you can get them any day. Today we got all of the Kapura of Yom Kippur. It's unbelievable. So it's gewaltig. I don't need those kapara because the karbanos on Yom Kippur are for tumas mikdash for kadosha, which anyway doesn't happen today. So what's the rule in kachim? So we don't need it because So the other version helping that all of our hard learning and all of our struggling should be ke'ilah we were makar karbonis, and it should lead soon to be makar emes karbonis. We should be zoichid the emes karbonis with the beis Mashiach, bekud of mamish. You're muted.
Shkoyach.
Shkoyach.
Agitavach.